Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, are you ready for Friday? I think you will be after watching this video. This is kind of a crash course in some of the hosting features in Zoom. So a couple of things before I jump in. One, I apologize for the audio quality. My mic is a little bit quiet, so I usually have to turn up the volume to kind of capture things, so you may be getting a little background noise. My apologies. The second thing is that we're going to kind of do two separate videos. So in this video, we're going to talk about sort of some hosting tips and tricks. We're going to talk about the security settings you're going to want to have in your room. And then we're going to talk about removing participants. I will do a separate kind of tutorial for the breakout rooms since we're only going to be using those in the chat room. All right, so this is kind of what you're going to look like in Zoom. The one thing that I should also preface this video by saying, I'm using the Zoom desktop client. So if you look down here, what that means is I'm running it as a separate application. I'm not just running it out of a web browser. I would recommend that everyone on our event team do that as well, just because the view might look a little bit different and you may not have all of the advanced settings if you're not in the desktop client. All right, so from a hosting standpoint, the first thing I always like to do is make sure that we have gallery view enabled. So you'll see right now we're in the gallery view. All three of our participants are taking up an equal amount of screen. You can switch to speaker view where you just get sort of a big spotlight on the person that's talking. But again, for the purpose of this event and hosting, you're going to want to have gallery view so you can kind of quickly scan through and see as many screens as possible. The other tip on the view is down here in your video settings. On your gallery view, you're going to want to make sure that you can display up to 49 participants per screen in the gallery view. This will just let you see more people at once. The screens will be small, but I think it'll be an easy visual way to flag something rather than have to scroll through like 5 or 6 settings or 5 or 6 screens if you have a lot of people. Another tip, totally unrelated to hosting, but there is a touch up my appearance option, which I definitely recommend because you can see that sweet blurry difference. All right, back to Morp. In terms of the host role, a couple other things I recommend. I always like to turn on my Manage Participants function. This will give you some nice options over here to see everybody if they have their hand raised. You can also see whose mics are on and whose cameras are on. And then I always like to have the chat button up as well. I usually will kind of keep this down here. You can slide it around wherever you need. I have 2 monitors, so oftentimes I'll swing the chat all the way over to the other screen and be looking back and forth. All right, so that's kind of the host tips. The last tip I will tell you as a host is that you can sort of toggle over individuals and see some details about them. This is also how you will make someone else a host or a co-host, which will give them sort of similar permissions. You can only have one main host at a time, but you can have several co-hosts. So in terms of switching from hosting gear and thinking about just your security settings, this is what you're going to want to do before anyone even enters your Zoom room. So your kind of 5:45 p.m. checklist before the event starts is you're just going to want to go through your room settings. So the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure that everyone is muted. So you're going to come down here and click Mute All. You'll get a little pop-up and you're going to want to make sure that participants cannot unmute themselves. This is going to let us control the sort of audio sound. It's also going to prevent any kind of trolling nasty comments. So make sure this box is unchecked. What's nice about this is that not only will this apply to everyone that's in the room, but for everyone that enters the room later, they will automatically be muted and they will not be able to unmute themselves. So that is checkpoint 1. Make sure that everyone is muted and they cannot unmute themselves. Security checkpoint 2 is we're going to want to make sure that other people cannot share the screen. So down here in your security button, you'll see that I have share screen unchecked. If when you open it, it's checked, just go ahead and uncheck it, and then you'll be good to go. The last thing you can do is you can lock your meeting, which will make sure that no one can come in. I would recommend doing this when you show up at 5:45 and you've gone through all your security settings. Actually, the first thing I would do is probably lock the meeting. That way you don't have any early arrivals and you can kind of have 5 or 10 minutes to kind of get your room ready. And then at 6 o'clock or a few minutes before 6 o'clock, we can unlock all the rooms. All right. That concludes this brief video. No, it doesn't. I forgot some things. Just kidding. We are going to talk about removing participants. So again, good rule of thumb is I would try and chat with someone before removing them. So let's say that T-Bone down here was being unruly. First, I can chat with this person privately and kind of let them know that I need them to stop sharing their screen due to the language or something like that. Again, just before booting people, I think we want to give them the chance to kind of rectify their behavior. If that doesn't work, or if the content that they're showing is so offensive that you just need to turn off their video, you can do that right here. You can stop that person's video. Last but not least, you have the option to actually remove someone. And there's two different ways you can do this. You can kind of ask them just to go into a waiting room, and by ask them, I mean move them into a waiting room. Or you can completely remove them. I would recommend, especially if you did not have the chance to engage in a private chat first, you might want to put them in a waiting room. You'll see that T-Bone is gone, but I can still chat to T-Bone in the waiting room. I can only talk to all the people in the waiting room, so if you have more than one person, this is not the most helpful feature, but it's good to know that if you have just one person in the waiting room, you can have a private chat with them there that way. We'll go ahead and let this person back in, give them another chance. I can ask them to restart their video if they want, but you'll notice that that's not something, unlike muting people, you can't force people to start their own video. So this person could now start their video if they wanted to. This person is me over in the dining room, so I'm not going to do that right now. But last but not least, you can remove this person. So that will just actually kick them from the room. I would say use this as a last case scenario, because if we do this, they cannot come back in. Now they can go to a different Zoom room, but they will not be allowed back into this room. And there you have it. They are gone. They're kicked out. All right, I'm just looking through my checklist. We talked about the kind of features that you're going to want to enable in terms of your view as a host. We talked about the room settings, muting everybody, making sure that people cannot unmute themselves, and turning off screen sharing. And then we went over how you can remove participants. So now I think we've covered everything. I'm going to record your second video on how to use breakout rooms.